Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Lauren Muzyka Show, your favorite update in the battle for life, family, and freedom. So thrilled to have you with me. Once again, I'm Lauren Muzyka, attorney and human rights advocate, and I serve as president and CEO of Sidewalk Advocates for Life, the nation's largest peaceful sidewalk outreach organization. So, who wants to know how to end abortion in America? I mean, if we know what abortion is, the taking of innocent human life, and we know what it can do to a mother and a family, it should move us as a people of faith and conscience to end it peacefully and lovingly, right? And again, the goal is not just to make abortion illegal, but really unthinkable, to change hearts and minds, to work on both levels of law and culture, to pray and work for the day that no more children die and no more women cry. But it occurred to me that no one has practically handed us a roadmap to get this done, a legal guide for actually accomplishing this. Because again, the goal was never to stop here in post-Roe America with a patchwork of states who are taking life while others preserve it. All human rights, and the right to life being chief among them, should really never be on the chopping block and extinguished by a mere vote. I don't know about you, but I would love to hear more about the different ways that America could actually get this done. So today, I'm bringing you one of the most brilliant people I know, and I'm not exaggerating. Actually, every time I talk to him, I feel a little dumb, right? But we're going to have a conversation today on the different ways that America could go from post-Roe to abortion free. So let's have a conversation. Peter Breen serves as executive vice president and head of litigation at the Thomas More Society. With over 2 decades of law practice, Mr. Breen has shown himself equally comfortable arguing in a federal courtroom, debating on the floor of a legislature, and explaining complex points of constitutional law in front of a television camera. Throughout, he has been in the thick of some of the nation's most significant legal and public policy battles. Mr. Breen served 2 terms in the Illinois House of Representatives, where he rose to become the Republican floor leader. He holds a bachelor's in electrical engineering, isn't that interesting, from Vanderbilt University and a JD from the University of Notre Dame. Let's welcome to the show, Mr. Peter Breen. Hey, Peter. How's it going?
Good morning, Lauren. It's going great. Just it's a busy time and one that very, very fruitful, I think, for the pro-life movement right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are so excited to have you on the show. Thank you for being one of our inaugural interviews here in season 1. But anyways, always just a delight to talk with you. You are a wealth of information and an inspiration to so many people. And you've been so many pro-lifers' attorney in the courtroom, right? So a lot of people know who you are, but just in case, I would love for you to take a moment to share a little bit more about yourself and how you got really into the culture battle as an attorney.
Sure. And so we at Thomas More Society were founded back in the late 90s to help defend Joe Scheidler in the Now v. Scheidler case. So the National Organization for Women and the Southern Poverty Law Center, kind of 2 of your favorite organizations to hate, in a Christian manner, of course. They came after Joe Scheidler, and really they were trying to shut down activism at abortion facilities nationwide. They wanted to get injunctions against our peaceable pro-life activists, just trying to push everyone away from the abortion facilities altogether. So that was the founding of Thomas More Society. Well, as for me, went to law school. I was not intending to be an activist in law school, and so I graduated in 2000. I just wanted to be a country lawyer or what have you. So of course I went and did a downtown intellectual property litigation track at a firm in Chicago. So it was, already was kind of an odd thing for me. That wasn't really what I went to law school for. But so I'll tell you the thing that really, you fast forward a few years, I was dating my now wife, Margie Mansko Breen. And she was then the program manager, would later become the director of the Respect Life office for the Archdiocese of Chicago under Cardinal George, of fond memory. And on Saturday mornings, she would pray at the Planned Parenthood right in the heart of the city downtown at LaSalle and Divisions, just a little north of downtown. Huge abortion facility. It was the highest volume in Illinois, I believe, for a while. 6 days a week they would do abortions, and
Wow.
for a lawyer downtown, Saturday's just another work day. As a young lawyer, especially, uh, would start the day with her praying at the Planned Parenthood, and then go back, go off to my office. Uh, in fact, she wouldn't date me if I wouldn't go pray with her. Uh,
What a good woman.
yeah,
I
yes,
love
it was kind of, I'd love to say it was just, I mean, look, I was glad to be there, but at the same time,
right.
it was either one or the other. So,
Stuff to do.
that began it. And, a few years later, I was asked by a local pastor, several local pastors, to start pregnancy centers in the western suburbs of Chicago. And so I put on more of my nonprofit organizational hat, and
Mm,
started a couple pregnancy centers. We did very well with it, but then Planned Parenthood opened a new facility in Aurora, Illinois, and at the time it was built, it was the largest abortion facility in the Western Hemisphere. And here it is.
wow.
It's right, just a few miles away from my pregnancy centers. So I was both personally offended because I'm saying, what are you doing coming into my county
Mm,
and building this massive abortion megaplex? But I started volunteering on the legal effort to try to find zoning irregularities or what have you. And it
mm.
turns out I found one that we then used in the litigation process. And I volunteered with Tom Brecka, who I met at that point. And at the end of there was an administrative proceeding or what have you. Well, then we were going to have to go to court. And I said, "Well, Tom, I've got to go back to my pregnancy centers. This is getting too intense." And he said, "I need you to come to work for me." And this was in
Wow.
2007. So Margie and I prayed about it. We talked about it with everybody, and that was when I made the leap over the Thomas More Society, and have been there ever since. I'm the second longest tenured attorney there now since
No
Tom
kidding.
Brecka. So
Wow.
it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then in the time since, I ran for office, served in the legislature, so represented a lot of, big pro-life folks all the way through, was able to beat the Obama Department of Justice on some of their shenanigans against the pro-life movement, and have been involved in now fighting off the Biden administration, and, Letitia James in New York, then Javier Becerra in California. And, it's been a wild ride. And,
Yeah.
again, we've been able to I think we've been able to do a lot of good in helping folks like you, Lauren, to be able to stay on the sidewalk, to be able to do your ministry without unduly worrying about the legal problems. You have to worry about them because that's just the world we live in. Lawfare is part of our existence, but we
Yeah.
try to keep the burden low on you, and frankly, increase the burden on the other side. So if they're doing things that are not appropriate, we'll come after them too.
So good. Peter, everything we do in our ministry, peaceful, prayerful, loving, law abiding, but inevitably other people don't know the law. The police sometimes don't know the law. And I can say that so many times you guys have come to our defense at the Thomas More Society and kept us on the sidewalk. Again, not that we were doing anything wrong necessarily, but just other people don't understand the law. And you were there to back us up and keep us doing what we're doing. And I've told people this before, but I truly believe the Thomas More Society is one of the reasons that we are now celebrating nearly 23,000 mothers and babies saved from abortion. So grateful for you guys. Really appreciate you being our heroes there in the courtroom and beyond. Really is a blessing.
I mean, look, we love you guys, and we love everything. All of your folks do. I
Mm,
mean, you've obviously got this massive core of volunteers across the country, and staff members and
yeah.
everybody. I mean, it's been our privilege and pleasure to be able to represent you.
Mm. Yeah, so great. Don't know what we do without you. So I've got an interesting question for you. Did you ever think that Roe versus Wade would be overturned in your lifetime? And then I'd love to hear your quick thoughts on the Dobbs decision that was written by Justice Alito.
Well, I mean, I think if you're an active member of the pro-life movement, you always had in your heart and in your soul a as much as your head might go, I don't know how Roe's going to get overturned. In your
Yeah.
heart, you had to know it was going to be overturned. And
Yeah.
I remember
Mm,
sitting with Governor Bruce Rauner in Illinois, he was a pro-abortion Republican, And I remember sitting with him at an event, and we were talking abortion because he was very pro-choice on things, and we were desperately trying to keep him from regulating in favor of abortion. We're trying to keep
Mm.
him signing some bad bills, which he signed a few of them. Um, but one thing I remember, we were sitting there, I think we were having a beer, and he said, "Well, Roe's never going to go down." And the other politicos who were my colleagues at the time were like, "Oh, of course, of course, of course." And I'm going, "Well, Governor, I don't know about that." And then
Mm.
here we are. It was about 5 years later. Well, then all of a sudden Dobbs comes in, and it really, I mean, obviously it shook the country. I think it shook the pro-life
Yeah.
movement, and especially
Mm.
right now, with where we're doing this interview. I mean, we are at this unique moment in history where we've got some very strong political currents that include pro-life, but they're bigger than us.
Yeah.
But we as a movement, I think, as much as we were waiting 50 years for Dobbs, we were caught unawares. I would
Yeah.
say on behalf of the movement,
Mm.
to the point where at Thomas More Society, we looked around after Dobbs, and we got much more involved in state legislative work because it's one of those things where you're looking around going, well, whose job is that? And
Yeah.
certain things you go, well, is that so and so's job or so and so's job? You're like, well, no, no, you just look in the mirror. It's my job now. And so
Mm. Mm.
we jumped in, say, to state legislative work a lot more actively than we ever had been. Well, also too was, I'm looking around at my staff. I mean, I served in Republican leadership in the Illinois House, which is it's a rough and tumble. Illinois is a pretty rough and tumble political state. So most folks, when I talk to legislators in other states, they respect that service because they know it was pretty rough. Um,
Yeah.
Half my staff had some experience either working in the legislature or working for a state policy conference or what have you. So we said, hey, we're just as well equipped to get in and help with this as anyone else is. And I know various groups that they had not been doing certain things pre-Dobbs. Now they're moving in, certain, maybe they were doing more public policy, maybe they're doing a little more advocacy or education than they were doing it, or they're doing it differently now.
Yeah.
And so I think I do, you had mentioned, this is not the fight. The fight's not over. I mean, we look. It took us 50 years to get here. Now,
Yeah.
there's a debate, and I know I'm not supposed to use sports analogies. My wife always told me stop that. But
It's
but
okay on this show. We'll let you, Peter.
yeah, I don't know if it's like football where are we on the 50-yard line? So in other words, are we only
Mm.
half done? So do we have another 50 years to go with this? Are we
Good
on the 20-yard? Are
question.
we on the other side's 20-yard line? Heaven forbid, are we on our own 20-yard line? I don't know. I do think
Yeah.
that's part of our talk today, but it's something where you see a lot of pro-life groups. They were designed for the pre-Dobbs pro-life movement, and
Ooh.
everyone's trying to figure out: are you going to survive? Are you going to adapt to meet the post-Dobbs reality? And we're
Right.
watching with some measure of concern because some groups are not, and it's I do think that's a I know we're I mean, and I'm not naming names because I think everybody in the movement is trying to make sure they are adapting properly. I hope they are. Um,
Yeah.
and there are things changing. The roles of pregnancy centers are changing. Obviously, the role of sidewalk counseling and the way it's practiced, frankly, thanks to Sidewalk Advocates for Life, has become more professionalized and is
Yeah.
becoming structured. It's not as there are times when sometimes it was haphazard, I guess you might say, and I don't
Sure.
think that's a critique. It was we're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and yeah, so
Throwing
that's
things together and hoping it'll work, right? So rather than maybe studying this a little bit like a lab rat, like I know I turned into a nerd when I was putting together Sidewalk Advocates for Life, and I was like, okay, what's working, what's not, right? And kind of upping our game at this juncture in history, I think has been so important. Right on.
right,
So
right. Well, and from the lawyer's side, I mean, you look at what the other side is doing. Uh,
yes.
we noticed. I mean, look, big law has always been left leaning, and lawyers generally. I mean, we know this. Our colleagues in the bar, probably 80% liberal and maybe 20%
Yeah.
conservative. And I
Yeah.
and you could probably say the same thing in terms of their pro-life commitment. Maybe it's 70-30, pro-abortion or pro-life. Uh, and so we have been seeing on the other side, I mean, they have absolute top quality lawyers who are volunteering for them. So Planned Parenthood is not having to
Mm.
pay a lot of times even for the legal harassment that they're doing of our clients. And of course, if they have control of a unit of government, well, they get the whole attorney general's office of the state of California, state of New York, state of Illinois, et cetera.
Yeah.
So these massive bureaucracies that they can just come after us with. And so even in the legal side of the pro-life movement, I mean, we have had to we've had to staff up. I mean, I've doubled the size of our legal team here at Thomas More Society just in the last 2 years because
Wow.
we need it.
That's
We were
right.
using, we're kind of using more outside counsel. I need people that are actually on my staff full time. Otherwise, we're just, we can't keep up with what the other side is doing to try to stop sidewalk advocates, to try to stop our pregnancy centers, to
Yeah.
try to stop our political movement or our public policy movement. Lawfare our people into oblivion. So that's where we are. And post Dobbs, of course, we now have 50 playing fields, and
Yeah.
we still have the federal government. Yeah, it's
Right.
funny. It's back to the states, but it's still with the federal government. So now we actually have 51 or 52, I guess, if you count DC. Uh,
Mm,
and so we have a red state strategy, purple state strategy, blue state strategy. And the blue
yeah.
states, I mean, Lord, your folks are realizing while nothing really changed. So pre-Dobbs, post-Dobbs in the states of California, New York, Illinois, I mean, nothing's really changed substantively. You can get an
Yeah.
abortion up until the moment of birth, pretty much in any of these
Right.
states. Uh,
Mm.
but now the government, it's almost like it's crazy. The government officials are more rabidly against us than they've ever been. And you're
Hmm.
going, why? Like, what do we do to you? You've got full abortion till till the baby's being born. What we didn't, what is it? It's like they're offended because Texas outlawed abortion. You're going, really?
Right.
I mean, I would do that.
Unbelievable.
When I talk to legislators, they're like, "Well, we're offended that Alabama was looking to ban abortion." I'm going, "You're in Chicago. Why do you care?" Um,
Right.
yeah. So it's a weird,
Wow.
it's just a weird time trying to adapt to those things. But I think that's going to be a big challenge for the pro-life movement in the next few years. I've said I thought it was going to take about 5 years post Dobbs for things to settle down and for us to
Hmm.
see maybe for the new battle lines, really for the remaining for the next half of this fight.
Yeah.
I think so I guess we got about 3 more years. If I'm going to stick to my prediction, about 3 more years, and we'll be able to talk again. And I can give you a very standard answer that everyone will agree with. Yeah, here's where it is. Here's where the fight goes. Um,
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now we're predicting. So it's more fun because we're predicting ahead of time. Where is this
Yeah.
thing going to go? What's going to happen?
Well, we'll have you back on in 3 years to have a follow-up discussion, right?
I'll look forward to it.
But
Assuming we're not
it's
all in
it's a real
jail. Yeah,
yeah, right. Oh my gracious. No,
we
it's
haven't been.
so true.
So,
I think when Roe was overturned, there was all this excitement, and pretty quickly after, fatigue set in, because I think people had this expectation that states were either immediately going to become pro-life or pro-abortion, and we'd really see this landscape very clearly. But you all at Thomas More Society were cautioning people like, no, we're going to have, state court battles. This is going to go back and forth. You're going to feel like you're getting, abortion state whiplash, right? And so just even the understanding that this was to be expected, I think helps us a little bit, and
yeah.
really helps us to pause and go, okay, this is part of it. And at some point here, the landscape's going to settle out just a bit more, and we're going to see more clearly the path forward. Is that fair?
I think that's what you're going to see. But I would say too, we have an opportunity in these next few years to shape
Yeah.
that, to make it easier.
Yes.
Because right
Ooh,
now, I mean, there's a way
so
this
good.
could be going. Yeah, I mean, we're on a path, depending on how you look at things, where it could be
Mm,
extremely difficult for us to mount an effective to continue our effective advocacy. But we can make it a lot easier as things are in flux right now. One of the things I think our side didn't realize was the
mhm.
amount of money and advertising that would be coming after us. And so, as somebody in politics who every contested race I ran, I was outspent significantly. If
Yeah.
you've never had to experience that, where your own
Mm.
neighbors are asking you if you shot your dog, and if you believe in this and that and the other, and you're going, where did you get that idea? And they say, well, the 15 mail pieces that showed up in my mailbox over the last 3 weeks. Um,
Wow.
that or hey, the broadcast television ad saying, you're a terrible person. If you've never had that, you don't quite understand the impact of money and how it can shape people's attitudes and opinions. Uh, and so we faced that, and so we are going to have to
Yeah.
figure out quickly, how do we rebut that? How do we, get the wins we can get and set ourselves up for a larger victory going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this, Peter, and then I do want to, dive into the crux question, the various ways that abortion could end in America. These state ballot initiatives, do you have any advice on how to fight these effectively? Like I'm thinking we may win in Florida, right? But that's
Yeah.
because you got to hit the 60% in order for, to go the pro-abortion way, right? But what do we do with all these state ballot initiatives that seemingly we're losing?
Well, I'd say there are several things. So we've filed multiple lawsuits on some of these initiatives. So we've got cases pending in Nebraska and Missouri, et cetera, that they'll resolve quickly.
Yeah.
If we'll see if after the election, if these initiatives are successful, whether we will can do some post election work too. But the real the question, say, for a state like Florida, it makes a lot of sense that you would, if you're going to put something into a state constitution, it needs a supermajority, instead of this 50%
Absolutely.
plus one thing. So right now we're on the receiving end of 50% plus one. But I think
Yeah.
the places I'm looking, yeah, we're looking at Florida. You've got to fight like crazy to defeat that initiative in your state. If you've got one of these pending, you got to fight it. Keep the numbers, keep the other side's numbers down, and look, the way this election is going, we just don't know. I
Yeah.
think folks, we all have to be expecting a close outcome, but it could turn if the at least the Republican candidate who was putatively pro-life, if they you know get a real wave behind them, which they should, frankly, just shown with the mess that has been made of the country on a variety of other issues besides life over the
Mm.
last 3.5 years, you'd figure, boy, shouldn't we be electing a change candidate just by landslide? If that happens, then you've got a little wind at your back, and all of a sudden, you might have more pro-life voters come to the polls than the pro-abortion voters. Uh,
Yeah. Good insight. Mm.
but the other issue that we really in the movement did not have as much of a plan for at a national level, and for a variety of reasons, and some of them are good, some not so good. Uh, in Nebraska, for instance, they have a pro-life amendment. I'm very
Mm.
interested to see if you give voters a choice, what will they choose? And the
Yeah.
hope is if they choose the pro-life amendment over the full abortion up to the moment of birth amendment,
Hmm.
then that gives you a path forward. Because right now we're hurting because of
Yeah.
50% one.
Right.
Well, in the next election in 2026, 2028, we can put anything we want on the ballot too. And if all we have to do is win 50% plus one, well, we can have a much more modest, uh, it'll be pro-life, but it won't be a total prohibition of abortion. And this does dovetail into, our discussion of how do you end abortion in America?
Yeah.
Remember, things were pre-Dobbs. For instance,
Mm.
the state of Missouri, which has an initiative coming up, the state of Missouri ended abortion in the state before Dobbs. There were no
That's
abortions,
right.
essentially no abortions happening in Missouri because merely the regulation and the difficulty that the state government, the hoops the state government made you jump through if you wanted to do abortions in that state, there were no abortions happening. So they never banned,
Yeah.
they couldn't ban abortion under the Roe regime, but there weren't any abortions happening. And there's nothing stopping a pro-life state, even without an actual ban. There's nothing stopping a pro-life state from requiring health and safety regulation, from requiring waiting periods, from requiring actual informed consent before people go and make a permanent decision to kill their child. There's nothing stopping states from enacting those laws. You don't have to ban abortion, even uh, if for whatever reason you can't politically. You certainly can regulate, though, based on health, safety, etc. And
Mhm.
that's something that we haven't. It's almost like people have just forgotten everything they learned from 50 years of public policy making.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, after this election, we're going to see. I mean, hopefully in this election, we win Florida. The pro-life amendment in Missouri, in Nebraska wins, we're able to maybe beat back some of these other amendments in other states, and then we mount an effective counterattack, going forward. Uh, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the immediate plan, I would say, for the
Yeah.
pro-life movement. It makes some sense.
I love that. I never thought about kind of a proactive ballot measure on our part, right? That I hadn't even gotten my mind around that. That's a really good thought. So for us to keep with us as we move forward. When we hear some of our colleagues talk about other ways abortion could end in America, like, the Supreme Court finding personhood for the unborn under the 14th Amendment, or us getting enough states together to ratify a new constitutional amendment, right, which would be pretty ironclad. Do you have a favorite path forward here besides, what you think might happen? How do you think What do you think is the most solid way for us to eventually get this done, especially understanding the relationship between law and culture? We got to win people on this, of course, to get the ball across the line. But, do you have a favorite way forward?
Sure, and I think it comes from the recognition that we thought, and our polling showed us, that the American people, majorities, were in favor of, say, abortion except in cases of rape, incest, life of the mother, something, like the old formula that, the Henry Hyde formula. And that's obviously, if you're pro-life, I mean, we don't want any baby killed, period. But if you're doing sidewalk ministry, obviously you're trying to save the ones you can save. And it's a similar point there. But now we're seeing this polling and apparently, and votes that are showing that maybe the American public, when push comes to shove, or when fed billions of dollars in advertising, both free and paid, by Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry, they're moving more in an abortion direction. We've got to make an assessment. What can we get, and in what time frame? So you've got to try
Mm,
culture. Constitutional amendment is nearly impossible to pass. I mean, think about all of the common sense ideas. So non-controversial things, that, like term limits. No, you poll the American public, they're like 80% in favor of term limits. And the other
mm.
20% is because they pushed the wrong button on their telephone when they were answering.
Right.
And we can't get a constitutional amendment for that. So
Mm,
I understand that is always a way, but our Constitution is nearly impossible to amend, short of a
yeah.
major war. I mean, look, it took a major war to get your 13th, 14th, 15th, that sort of thing. The 19th Amendment, you know, that took a nationwide movement over many, many years to be able to get that passed. I mean, so that is a path, but I would
Yeah.
be, I mean, look, part of the problem is, can someone step up and go, "We're going to do this." Yeah. And you're like, well, okay,
Mm,
sure. In 20 years, does that mean that you should, as you're looking at where do I put my energy, effort, time, money, et cetera, should I put it there right now?
yeah.
I'm not going to. Um, 14th Amendment. That's the one where you say, hey, what is the point of equal protection? And we're saying that all people, all men were created equal. Well, what does that mean if you go, well, the minute before birth, you're not actually a person at all, and so, you
Mm,
don't count. So
yeah.
there's some strength to that argument from a heart point. The
Yeah.
mind point, boy, you've got to convince a lot of lawyers and a generation or several generations of lawyers and law professors that, hey, this doesn't make any sense. So that's a long
Mm,
project. I like thinking hard about that project because, I mean, there's a bunch, and I have friends on both sides of that debate, but it's an argument we probably should be having because, look,
yeah.
our understanding of the Constitution does change. Uh,
Yeah.
and if you ask the folks who enacted the 14th Amendment, what do you guys think? And actually, you do that plus show them the science that here's the baby and the baby's here, and look at, here's you. This was you at age X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
They, I think there might have been more of a go like, we don't like that. I mean, abortion was essentially banned in the country at the time of the 14th Amendment, pretty much
Yeah.
coast to coast. So they didn't really need to grapple with the issue: are the unborn covered by, the guarantee of equal protection? Because it was just banned. We weren't supposed to do it. Now, how do you penalize it? Whatever. But they didn't
Mm,
do it. It was understood.
yeah.
So that's an open question. To me, the
Yeah.
more practical way forward, and this is something I haven't seen others really talk about as much as I think we should.
Mm,
When I was running pregnancy centers, and now I represent them, we always had a statistic that 50% of abortions are repeat abortions.
Yeah.
Think about it. Once you
Sure.
get on that track of thinking abortion is an okay way to, control your fertility and is almost like a method of birth control, well, you're going to stay on that path. So if we can
Mm,
off that path, I mean, think about it. If 50% of the abortions are repeat abortions, well, once you stop that funnel, stop folks from, having to, get on that terrible path. Well,
yeah.
the abortion rate doesn't just go down by the number of people that you convince. It goes down by like double the number of people you convince because
Mm,
it's a propagating thing. It's exponential instead of linear. Well, the fewer people who are actually either getting abortions themselves or procuring abortions for another person, because we know in the pro-choice side, it's folks that feel, they had some personal experience with abortion. That's what makes
mm,
them convicted on the abortion side. So if we can reduce that number, life gets easier. All these tasks of trying to help people understand the truth of life and to make them pro-life becomes much easier. And so that to me,
mm,
uh, we're going state by state. I mean, it is to some extent. I mean, this is not an easy fight. It's a state by state, step by step, doing what we're doing now. So some states have prohibited abortion altogether. Others have significantly restricted it. We get these
mm.
regulations where pro-life states, you look and go, we just make it cost prohibitive potentially
Yeah.
for abortionists to do kind of a dirty business because these guys, they run fast and loose. They're chop shops. I mean, they're horrible, horribly
Yeah.
run. Yeah, you actually make them follow the same medical regulations that we require of everything else we have in society. All of
Right.
a sudden, yeah, you're going to reduce your abortion rate because you can't do this thing ethically and
Yeah.
properly the way they are. So between
Mm,
that, I mean, to me, the state angle is huge. So now you're reducing that abortion rate altogether. And then on the federal side, I know this is not necessarily popular. Right now, our presidential election, we're in the middle of a presidential election where because the people of the country, at least in the swing states, are perceived to be at least moderately pro-choice, or they've got a hang up about abortion, you've got both sides, both the Republican and the Democratic candidates, kind of disclaiming federal involvement in abortion, but it's there. I mean, we
mm,
regulate so many things on the federal level that abortion is a fair topic for that regulation. And obviously, we already prohibit our federal dollars from going for most abortions, elective abortions, as they're considered under federal law. So that it's not like the topic goes away in the long term. And you can again, you can make it so that the abortion rate reduces, and as the abortion rate reduces, you've got the number of people involved in abortion reducing. All of a sudden, the temperature comes down because when people think
yeah.
clearly about the abortion issue, you're going, well, why would I want? I mean, it's like my kids. Why would they look at the issue of abortion and go, why would anyone do that? And at some
Mm,
point, as we mature and age, there's a point where people convince themselves it's okay. And
yeah.
really, that's part of our job in the pro-life movement to help folks continue to think about it in a more reasonable
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And so that to me, and that is a long, slow process, but it continues the work that we've done. And really, I mean, to me, the idea too of settling out after Dobbs is some of it was, I mean, it's emotion. I think if you can get
Yeah.
past, I think if we can get positive movement after this election, so hopefully the Nebraska pro-life amendment passes. But even then, as we get further and further from Dobbs, and we see more and more states where abortion is significantly restricted, and the states are, I mean, the state of Texas, one of the largest in the country, no
Mm,
abortions. State's operating fine. Economy's good. Home prices are just fine. Everything seems good in Texas. It's a little
love
touristy.
it.
But yeah, I
Yep.
know of Texas.
I,
Um,
I'm
I,
I'm a Texan, so I love my
yeah,
state. We protect life at conception. Amen. Yeah.
and you know what? And you look at it and go, well, how in the world can this big cosmopolitan one, and everything in between state, um, they're operating and doing fine with no abortions. Well, maybe it'd be
Right.
okay in my state. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that is my hope that work happens. Well, then once you get some leverage on the problem and you start restricting where the abortions are occurring, well, all of a sudden now people are going, yeah, why do we have this? What's the point here?
Mm,
And they can
yeah.
think about it and go, yeah, I don't, why are we killing our children? And you get
Mm,
people like Elon Musk, who's not a pro-life advocate, but is sitting there going, our birth rate's going through the floor. I mean, it doesn't. So even like the folks that are more rational, scientific-y are going to go, why are we doing this abortion thing? Doesn't make any sense. And then folks, who are looking at it going, well, why are we killing our little children? Like, what's the point there? You put all that together, and with some leverage on the problem and some time, I think then we can start looking at. I don't know that you're going to need a constitutional amendment, because this is the
Mm,
other thing, the strength for a constitutional amendment, you've got the strength for a federal law, pretty much making abortion very, very hard to do in this country.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
those are my
beautiful, beautiful
path.
thoughts. I
Yeah.
think what you're hitting on too, like there's such a relationship between law and culture, right? Culture, of course, being the hearts of the people. This is a human issue and it requires a human response. Um, what are some of the favorite things that we are doing as a movement to change hearts and minds on the issue? Just again, piggybacking off of what you're saying. And then why is it important? Because I even hear this amongst some people who call themselves pro-life, right? They say, oh, like, I don't know about making it both unthinkable and illegal and unthinkable. How would you answer that?
Well, and this goes to our question of, well, what laws and regulations should you put into place? Well, if you're getting too far away from the people, you go, oh, well, if we could sneak in this, and this. I mean, the left does this. I mean, they do this
Mm,
all the time. The state of Illinois, for instance, they repealed parental notice prior to a minor's abortion. All the good polling showed 75% of Illinoisans were in favor of parental notice. So that's,
mm,
pro-choice on abortion, pro-life on abortion. And we're a left-leaning state. The other side didn't care, just didn't care. They said, we're going to do it anyway. And
yeah.
did they pay any price? No. But at the same time, your laws and regulations do need to be somewhat in step with where the people are. So you
Mm,
can't ban something if everyone thinks it's okay, because then also, I mean, look, we've got pill abortions. There are all sorts of ways that people are going to be able to get abortions illegally. And so you really do need to make it unthinkable, because otherwise folks are going
mhm.
to sit there and go, whatever, and this happened with something like a marijuana. Folks were all, I mean, if you wanted marijuana, you could go get it. But
Yeah.
now it's legalized, which has been a bit of a mess in the states that have done it. But abortion's the same way. I mean, we if we don't convince people that it's not the right path for them, well, they'll figure out a way to get a pill from India, or from Mexico or wherever, or
Yeah.
there are these networks out there to do this. We really do need to do both. You've got to
Yeah.
convert hearts and minds as you continue to change the laws. But again,
Mm,
I mean, and it's funny because at the same time as we're some of these abortion initiatives have gone very poorly. You look in the states where they've either severely restricted abortion or prohibited it outright. None of those state legislators lost their seats over their pro-life vote.
hmm.
Not losing them. And in the
There you
same way,
go.
like in Illinois, no legislator lost their seat because they stripped away parental notice, even though now your 12-year-old can be taken for an abortion without you knowing, by her
Mm,
rapist. Uh, so no one's losing their seats either way. And so
yeah.
maybe if you give folks a vote straight up or down, maybe they'll go, well, I prefer. I mean, if you give me a choice between no abortions and full abortions, I'll choose full abortions. I mean,
Right.
as unfortunate it is, it's happening. I mean, like, you can't deny the reality. Um, but
Just
if
because
you
they
vote,
want some. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
right. But you sit there and go, will I vote for a legislator that's for full abortions? Will I stop voting for my local rep,
Mm,
who's the Republican, because he's for full abortions? No. Will I stop voting for my local liberal rep, who's for, or, whatever, the full abortion person? Am I going to stop voting for them because they're full abortion, even though I'm pro-life? Nope. Am I going to stop voting for the no abortions person because I'm pro-choice? Nope. It seems like folks they don't change their legislative vote. And so
yeah.
there's some realizations there, I think, that could help us in shaping our legislative and our regulatory, ideas going forward. But I'll say
Yeah.
this: pro-life states will raise red flags about certain abortion facilities in the state, and the state government will sit there and go, well, and I'm going, you guys all run as pro-life. You say you're pro-life. Well, why aren't the regulators just at least give it a good hard look?
Yeah.
If the same shoe was on the other foot, they'd be coming after us. They're trying to shut down our pregnancy centers. I have so many inquiry letters from attorneys general I'm dealing with for pregnancy centers, harassment, lawfare against the pregnancy
Mm,
center movement. Same as the sidewalk counseling movement or sidewalk advocates, sidewalk advocate movement. I So we do have tools in the toolbox, but again, you don't want to get too far away from where your people are. It's just it's
Yeah.
American. It's against. I know we're a republic, not a democracy, but at the same time, at some point somebody's going to get voted for, and so you do want to try to be in step with your people.
Yeah, it's a really tricky balance, right? We know that law tends to follow culture. Some people keep the law as their moral compass, and so we're kind of doing this thing right now where we're trying to move people ahead. But at the base of this, what I hear you saying is it's all about education, and there's no doubt that we've got a lot of work to do.
And can I'll tell you, I will say this. There's some folks. There are attacks within the pro-life movement. And
Yeah,
there are some people that say they're pro-life and they're just kind of off like they're out in outer space. So I'm not talking about them, but in the movement where you've got disputes between the public policy arm or the pregnancy centers or the sidewalk advocates or the politicians or what have you, where people are trying to do things in good faith and just might have a different
yeah,
way of doing it. As long as they're doing their best, they're staying within the bounds of the law. There should be no argument there. And
yeah.
I would urge that. It's
Hmm.
kind of funny. I had a friend of mine in the legislature who was we were just we were publicly always totally aligned.
Hmm.
Behind closed doors, we fought like cats and dogs
Hmm.
about how exactly we would do a particular thing. Totally agreed on all the moral issues and fiscal issues, et cetera. And behind closed doors, we would go after it. And
Yeah.
so pretty rough and tumble. But when we came out of those doors, you wouldn't know that. The public
Hmm.
didn't know. The public is looking like they can't understand, because it's just, everything's kind of quick. People are busy. All they see is conflict. Oh, so look, if we're pulling in the same direction, we're all supposed to be on the same team. Let's be on the same team. Again, we've got to have, ways of dealing with these things, even within your own pro-life group at your church or your local pregnancy center or whatever. You know what? There are going to be issues. There are going to be disputes and debates. I would just say, look, have the time for those debates and disputes. But when we get out to the public, when we're advocating for, against the murder of little children, we should be united on that topic.
Hmm.
And just because we're a little, we don't like the way so and so maybe puts this or that, or that, I don't like the way that group does it, or who cares? We're trying to
Hmm.
save lives and
Yeah.
help people to understand the value of those lives. So
Yeah.
that's maybe a more general, especially as we're in a political season, maybe a more general comment or observation.
Yeah, well, the other side is united for sure. Oh my goodness. And that's really something to pay attention to. Well, Peter, this has been a fascinating discussion. I could talk to you all day. Like I said, a wealth of information. We're so blessed to have you as our attorney here in the pro-life movement. And we're so grateful to the rest of the attorneys at Thomas More as well. We'll have to have you back on. Hopefully, there won't be a need for a Lauren Muzyka show in a few years, but otherwise, I'll go ahead and slate it for a few years from now, and we'll do a follow-up interview. We'll probably have you on in between then too. But really appreciate the discussion today. Thank you so much, Peter.
Appreciate it, Lauren. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. All right. Well, closing thought as we get ready to wrap up the show here. There are people out there who struggle with the idea of making abortion illegal. They ask, where will women go for help? What about women who need help with incomplete miscarriage, early delivery, where their health is legitimately at stake, or ectopic pregnancy? Are these women, if abortion is made illegal, up a creek, so to speak? That's what the other side has been talking a lot about, right? And my answer to this is these are great questions and there are great answers to them. First, we have these centers across America called pregnancy help or pregnancy resource centers. They outnumber abortion facilities more than 4-1. They are the jack of all trades, as I call them, for women facing unexpected pregnancies, providing things like insurance, food, groceries, a place to live, schooling options, and so much more. They help women make a plan to live their dreams and have their babies. And second, when it comes to emergency medical situations in pregnancy, the ethical practice of medicine allows us to preserve the mother's life. It just doesn't forget about the life of the preborn child. If a woman needs a D&C following a miscarriage, that's not an abortion. Abortion is an intentional decision to end the life of a developing preborn child. In miscarriage, the child has passed naturally, and we should ensure that mom gets the follow-up care that she needs at the very least to avoid infection. In the case of ectopic pregnancy, it's always been understood in the practice of medicine, as well as philosophy, theology, and beyond, that it's morally permissible to remove, say, a diseased tube where the unintended side effect is that a preborn child may not live. That's not an abortion. It's always been understood that way. And lastly, doctors have always facilitated early delivery in emergency situations where it's necessary to separate mother and child, knowing otherwise both will perish. But again, the goal isn't to go in and directly kill the child. They do an early delivery with the hope possibly to save both. We can love them both. We can treat them both. There are answers out there to real human problems. And I pray that we'll be willing to open our hearts and minds to the possibilities and have that discussion. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much again for joining me for another episode of the Lauren Muzyka Show. We'll be back here next Friday at 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern on Facebook Live, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great week.